Okay, good afternoon, everyone who has joined us or who is getting to watch this video. I have the pleasure of spending a few minutes with some very dear friends who agreed to have me do an interview with them about 4 years ago. But they are one of the couples featured in my new book. I wanted to give you a chance to meet them. So they are going to share a few of their, a little of their inside information, if you will, so you can get to know them a little bit. Let me introduce them. Reverend Jeff and Brenda Gaines, thank you for being with me today.
Thank you, Linda.
I'm glad that you were able
Thank you, Linda, for having us today.
Absolutely. So your story in the book is about the different seasons of marriage. And I tell you, you brought to mind, I think, for married couples who read about it, the seasons are plentiful and diverse, from challenges of communication, financial, growing up in maturity in your marriage, child rearing, relocations, and some very serious seasons like grief, loss, all of the transitions that you've been through together. So in these few minutes, we won't go in detail on things you shared, but I have picked just a couple of things if you all would talk about with, so that our audience can have some insights. First, I'll start with you, Jeff. When did you two meet?
So I would have to say, as far as back as I can remember, we met when I was at the age of 5. And I would like to kind of share how I first saw Brenda when I was at the age of 5, because it made a lasting impression. My family just happened to relocate to an area where her mom lived, and I lived across the street. And I remember one day just being out in the front yard, and this car pulled up, and a little girl got out. And I said to myself, "Oh man, she's cute," from a 5-year-old's perspective. And I said, "Hey, that's a really little cute little girl getting out the car with ponytails." And I kind of left it at that because, I was kind of like a shy kid. So that's how we first met, was at the age of 5, after my mom relocated to an area where Brenda's mom lived, where we moved right across the street from them.
I love that story. And Brenda, let me ask you, so you all met, you were 5, and Brenda, how old were you?
I was 6 and he was 5.
Okay. Do you remember seeing him that day too?
Oh, I do.
And just for sake of time, just tell us, when did your relationship move from just first meeting to pursuing a love interest?
Well, goodness, that would probably be best told by Jeff. I believe, though, he came home from the military, and I wanted to go see Purple Rain. And so he asked me, he said, "Let's go and see Purple Rain." And I said, "Okay." And then I said, "Are you asking me as your best friend or a date?" And he said, "A date." I'm like, "Oh, okay."
Wow. Oh, that's when there was a shift
Yeah.
That is actually, that's pretty accurate. I'd like to add a little bit more context to that too, though. So, I said we met at the age of 5, but all the way from 5 until that date that Brenda just described, we just became the best of friends. Growing up, we used to hang out, but just purely as friends. I never looked at her during those times as a potential girlfriend or someone of a love interest. We were just, in my mind, just friends. And then, as she just indicated, I came home from the military and I saw, I'm like, oh, she's really grown up a little. She looks really grown up. And we stayed in contact by phone, over all these years and letters and stuff like that. But I just happened to be home on leave one day, and she was home on. Obviously, she was home on leave because we were both in the military at the same time.
Okay.
And we happened to be at home on leave at one particular time, and that's when I believe our friendship turned into a romance, if you will.
Good night kissing.
In other words, when she was smitten by the chocolate.
Oh my goodness.
Gotcha, Jeff. Gotcha.
So he takes me down.
Well, before the stories go in too divergent directions. Well, you guys were so open. Your story really captured my heart because you were so candid in the kind of things that you were willing to talk about. Let me get in here though, before I go further. How long have you two been married, Jeff?
We've just crossed the 37 years of marriage, so going on the door of 38 years now. Praise God.
Yes.
So I wanted that pointed out, audience, so you can know that this couple has really seen some different seasons of marriage. Yeah.
Yes.
I wanted to just pick a couple of things to have the audience learn a little about you, and there may be things that the audience can relate to, because like I said, you all were so candid. Brenda, when we talked, you talked about having some postpartum depression when your first child was born.
Yes.
Would you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Well, I remember coming home from the hospital, and I'm telling you, we were just overjoyed because I had nieces and a nephew. And so ever since I was a little girl, I loved children. And so our firstborn, Jeffrey, it was just such a beautiful baby and a happy baby. And this went on for about 2 months. We were just over the top of the moon, really. And then about, I think like 2.5 months, I started feeling really sad. And I thought, well, why am I so sad? And so my grandfather died around that time. So I thought, well, maybe it was that. But we went home to bury our grandfather and went back to Germany. And I thought something is not right. And so I just said, let me go to the doctor. And I went to the doctor and she said, you have postpartum depression. And I'm like, well, what is that? I had never heard of that. So back then, of course, we didn't have the internet like we do now, but I bought some books on it from the library and I began to understand. But I was crying and weepy and just sad. And it was just, it was really awful. And it lasted about 2.5 months. And as quickly as it came, it just kind of went.
Well, I love the what you shared with us in the interview, or when we had the interview, about how you worked through postpartum depression. But we'll let readers learn more about that later. One thing I wanted to have Jeff say a little about, because I think there are people who are listening and who will read the book who can relate to these different things that you all shared so openly. Jeff, I remember you talked about school being very hard for you. And I'd love for you to just talk a little bit about what your challenge, how school was challenging for you.
Sure. Yes, as a child, school, I just couldn't get it. And, I found myself not able to read or write, to be able to write. And as a result, they end up placing me in, very special ed classes and all these other things that actually created more of a problem for me because it even hindered my confidence even more. And I just struggled through elementary, middle school, and high school. And then ultimately I dropped out of high school, because I just didn't get the academics and it just wasn't coming to me. So it was a complete struggle, in my early on years, which, has a lifelong effect if you don't deal with it and work the process of trying to overcome those fears from an early age. So that was kind of my environment I was in that kind of caused my academic challenges.
Mm. Well, audience, I just want to say, I think you will be inspired by some of what Jeff ended up doing and
Yes.
how he overcame his challenges with education. But you have to buy the book to find out.
I love that.
You guys,
Super.
you guys had, well, you helped me directly when I lost my mom. You all talked very openly about going through quite a season in your own lives with grief. And Brenda, I would appreciate if you would just share a little about, you know, what that season was like, you know, when, if we might just talk about when Jeff first had the dominoing effect
Yes.
of loss.
Yeah, that was tough. So what happened, Linda, was Jeff's sister, we call her Bunny, her name was Bernadette. She took ill the year before she died. So in January of that year, she got really ill and she died in January. So that was really tough. And the next blow was Jeff's mother went in for routine gallbladder surgery and died that October. So my Jeff and our daughter Candace was having such a hard time. I decided to go to Griefshare to figure this thing out, is how can I help them to grieve?
Mhm.
But wow, little did we know that within 12 months, my mother would also die. And so Bunny, Jeff's mother, and my mother, within a year's span, had just died. And so that was just very traumatic. So I had went through Griefshare to help Jeff and Candace grieve, but then I ended up helping myself.
Mm.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about what Griefshare did for you. And then Jeff, I want to hear from you as well.
Okay.
The only phrase I could use, and I tell people that have gone through grief, is I believe it saved my life. And I wasn't suicidal or anything, but I told Jeff one day, I said, honey, I don't care. I'm going to get in this bed and I'm going to pull the cover over my head. And I don't care if I ever get up. And that was life. I felt that way. And I was going to work. I was cooking and cleaning and being a functional friend, a functional wife, and a functional director. But inside, I was just grieving, functional mom. But it was rough. And so Griefshare, you talking about turning mourning into joy, it was just a life jacket. It helped me to really be able to navigate and swim through that season.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For those listening, I think, who have had a loss, I think you can imagine that how tough it is to get up and continue to do what you need to do every day when you're grieving.
Yeah. It takes
Jeff,
your breath away.
Yeah, that's a good description. It takes your breath away. Jeff, give us your insights, please.
Yeah, sure. In all transparency, I did not want to go to Griefshare. I fought it pretty much to the bitter end until Brenda and some church members said, you need to go, and I did go. And because Griefshare to me is the group that you're in that costs too much to get in, and it's a lifetime membership. But grief is, what I've learned is grief is the cost that we pay for loving people.
That's right.
And once I grasped that concept, it made my journey a little less painful. And Griefshare to me was I'll have to say it, a lifesaver. Because, as a male, in particular in my culture, when someone died, you kind of had the funeral, had to wait and went 8, and then you kind of never talked about it after that.
Yes.
So Griefshare was that group that allowed me to express exactly how I felt, whether it sounded crazy or not.
Right.
I was in a room with everybody else who felt this just as crazy as I was.
Mhm.
And by that camaraderie, we were able to help each other navigate a journey that none of us wanted to be on, but we did find ourselves on that. So Griefshare helped me to do that more effectively. And also it helped me to understand that I was not just grieving by myself. I had children that were grieving. I had siblings that were grieving, that I needed to understand my grief in order to be able to help them as well. So that was a journey that Brenda and I found ourselves on, that obviously we didn't want to be on, but God gave us the strength to go through that. And the journey continues. And I tell people at the end of class, it's like you get a certificate and everything is over. It just equips you with tools to help you navigate those ambushes of grief.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said. I wanted to have Brenda and Jeff speak about Griefshare, because it is such an effective resource and tool when you're going through grief. They talk more extensively about it during our interview, but I would love, Jeff, if you give the website, if anybody's listening who might need that support, if you have it.
Yeah, it's just simply griefshare.org, or just Google Griefshare, and it will pop up and you'll see all the listings for it, but it's pretty much griefshare.org.
Awesome. I really appreciate you all sharing that. Brenda, just share, you all ended up investing quite a bit in being a part of Griefshare, right?
Yes. So what happened was Griefshare was so beneficial to Jeff and the children and I that we really felt led to, facilitate it. And so we did it for what, 10 years, 12 years?
It's about 12 years, roughly about 12
years. Because again, for our family, it was really hope, it was life. It was just being able to not only survive, but to really thrive, and to know that we were helping others to thrive. Because not only did Griefshare help us for that season of losing my mom and Jeff's mom and sister, I realized that I was even grieving my grandfather and my aunt years before. So it was just life-saving.
I so appreciated that, and to the audience, this couple invested themselves in, after they had gone through the program and becoming lead facilitators in their church for 12 years to help others move through the stages of grief. And again, I'm one benefactor when my mom passed away and what I would call Griefshare is a place that helps you to find words to what you're going through, while others are helping to prop you up. Everybody there understands what you're going through.
That's right. I love that.
Agreed.
Yes.
But moving along, I definitely have to have this story shared. When we did the interview, Brenda shared that she was kind of a shy person. And what happened at that point is, it turns out, even after 37 years of marriage, you can learn something new about your spouse, right, Jeff?
Yeah, well, beyond that, after maybe 50 years of knowing each other, that was a shocker.
Well, I am shy.
Well, I would love for Jeff to give the counter illustration for this shyness.
Yes, sure. So, like I said, my wife and I have known each other for over 50 something years, and I've never known her to be shy. So when she made that statement, I like, really? And so I was reflecting on a situation where we both were in Boston and we were going to take the train back. And in my mind, I was going to make it like a picnic experience. So I went to the local supermarket, picked up some goods, some sandwiches, and nuts, all that stuff. And I made this, in my mind, beautiful basket of food. And so we get on the train. I'm getting ready to grub, and she nudged me. She says,
Oh, first, Jeff, you were going from Boston to
Boston to Washington, D.C. We were going
Okay.
back home. I was up on a conference, so Brenda came to join me, and we were riding back together on the train. And so we're sitting in the seats, and I'm getting ready to, to grub down, and she nudged me and said, "Hey, those people behind us, they look like they're hungry. Maybe we should give them our food." And I'm going, "Oh, maybe I want to eat this food." And so we ended up, well, she ended up, of course, doing that. But by the time we got from Boston to Washington, D.C., I think Brenda had introduced and shook everybody's hand that was in that entire conference. And there were people from different countries that didn't speak English and so forth. I call it a United Nations meeting on Amtrak. And so the fact that she said she was shy, I didn't get, because I could have sat on that train and not said a word from Boston to Washington, D.C. If nobody said anything to me, I would have just been fine. But Brenda had the entire train in a conversation. So when she said shy, that just went completely over my head.
Well,
I love that
I'm shy,
story.
but my gifting is an extreme extrovert.
You operate your gift very well, dear. You operate very well in your gift,
Well,
which is a great thing.
as you can see, the Gaines have, they are candid in their story of challenges they've faced. They also share during the interview, and it's all captured in the book, how they've overcome challenges in the different seasons of their lives. I hope that this short interview has invited you and made you more interested in picking up my new book, Overcoming, Stories of Triumph Through Faith. And that book says everything that it is, because as you will see, the people that are featured in the book have some special tactics and some special strategies that they use to overcome their challenges. So I hope you will check it out. Brenda and Jeff, thank you so much for our time.
Our
It's been a
pleasure.
blessing.
Thank
Yes,
you,
our
Linda,
pleasure.
and a marvelous job on what you're doing. We're looking forward to getting our copy of the book
right.
as well. So God continue to
No, a
bless
signed
you as
copy.
you continue on this path.
I said
Yeah.
a signed copy, hun. Signed autograph.
I told you she wasn't shy, didn't I? I told you she wasn't shy.
There goes that shyness again.